Namaste, yogis. Welcome to the Alchemical Astrology Report coming to you from Karma Yoga Center in Denver. This is for the new moon in the sign of Libra, happening Monday, October 8th, 9:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And when the moon is new, it's in the same sign, exact same sign as the sun. So the sun and the moon are in Libra, and they're also joined now by the planet Mercury hanging out there. The sun has to do with our heart energy, our personality, if we're talking personal astrology. The moon has to do with our emotions, our inner selves, our inner child. And Mercury has to do with communication, with travel, and with information moving around. With this new cycle starting in Libra until the next new moon a month from now, we're setting the seeds for what the tone will be this whole month, at least for the lunar cycle. And Libra has to do, it's the sign of the balance holder, the one who's holding the scales, the signs of justice, the signs of cooperation, of relationship, of harmony. So we're looking at principles of how we're coming into balance and harmony. And the main place to start from this is with yourself. This cycle is looking at, are you in balance internally first? Are you in balance with your external personality, what you're putting out into the world, what you're telling people, what your personality is, how you're showing up at work, what you're putting out as your emotions, and is that in balance with what is really happening on your internal world? If somebody asks you how you're doing, you're like, I'm fine. And inside, you're churning and you're depressed and you're mulling over things. There's a disconnect between those two worlds, which creates poor relationship for you. It creates unbalance. It creates disharmony within inside of yourself. And vice versa, how is the outer world being reflected back to you? If we take it out to a bigger principle of society, this is a time where we may be seeking justice or wanting balance in energies or making sure things are fair in the energy exchange happening between transactions, whether it's money or if it's in families, if it's time that's being spent on things or energy, or if it's a project with people. Or is there balance in our government? Is there balance in our society between men and women? Is there balance in the world between different trade systems of different governments? Is there balance in our justice system? So these issues may be coming up at a time when the new moon is in Libra, and particularly with that Mercury element right there next to the sun and moon, saying we need to communicate about this. There needs to be fairness in communication. Is there fair airtime in perspectives that are coming across? And one of the unifying principles of balance and harmony and bringing things into justice for Libra is there cooperation? Is there consideration? Is there finding new ways to come together? And so Libra wants that participation by both parties in an equal type of way. If you're finding that this is happening in your world, pursue that deeper. Or if you're challenged by a relationship with a single person, perhaps find a way to communicate and also to listen. The sign of Libra is ruled by the planet and the energy of Venus. And Venus has all to do about self-love. So the deepest principles of Libra is, are you coming into self-love, and how's that relationship being reflected back to you from the external world around you? And are you putting love back out into the world in the relationships you're carrying you? Are you being nourished by those relationships? Maybe it's time to transfer out of a job or relationship or a particular way of thinking that's not nourishing for love and balancing that way. To add to this new moon and sun and Mercury in the sign of Libra, we also have a square, a 90-degree angle to the planet Pluto. And Pluto is in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn and Libra are 90-degree angle signs on the zodiac wheel. And if we look up into the sky, they're making that form, the same 90-degree form. Pluto has to do with evolution, with the transformation of things, also with the death of things or the stagnation of things. It has to do with rebirth and going into the underworld and the underbelly of things, and what's the energy behind something, or what's been hidden, or what's the passion or intensity going on with a situation, or in this case, a relationship. And relationship is everywhere in our world. In the Lokah tradition, they have a saying or a greeting, Mitakuye Oyasin, which means all things or all beings are my relations. And that includes the environment, the water, the wind, the animals, the buildings, anything that you can put out there we're in relationship to. Your ideas are a type of relationship. The food you eat is a type of relationship. And Capricorn, which Pluto is in, which is seeking to find out what it needs to evolve, what needs to transform, what's stagnating. Capricorn has to do with society, with government, with politics, with politicians. It also has to do with the structure of things and law and karma and dharma. And if we take it more to a principle thing, it's what is an integrity, what are our values, what are our core values, and what is respected in our society. And when we come into a clash of Libra and Capricorn, or at least they're coming together at a focal point to say we need to put our energies here and investigate and look at this, what in our society around values and integrity and respect is stagnant, out of balance, not in harmony, not creating further evolution for all beings involved. The yogis also have a saying like the Lokah, Samastah, Sukhino, Bhavantu. May all beings be free, or may all beings be happy and free. And this time of Pluto squaring the sun and the moon, which has to do with individuals, are individuals valued in our society? Are men and women valued equally in our society? Is there equal justice that happens in our world? You could take this out further to anything, but check what's happening for you in your personal world, or look at what's going on in the news, what's going on with our government, and see how this plays out. Einstein has talked and written about the energies of problems, and he says trying to repeat the same energy that you've been doing over and over again, expecting different results, is the definition of insanity. Or trying to solve a problem at the same level of created won't bring any solution forward. So when we come to a square, if we just keep plowing forward, think of two cars coming towards an intersection with no stop sign. We're going to come into some sort of crash or some sort of issue that's going to happen there when the two energies collide. But if there's proper guidance and there's cooperation and consideration, we come to a stop and the energies pause for a moment to reflect, to say, what am I bringing to the table? What have I said? What have I done? What's my position? Am I bringing enough love? Am I being compassionate enough? Am I being considerate enough? Am I drawing strong enough boundaries? What do I stand up for? Capricorn also wants to know, what do you value? What are you as a society, if you want things to change? How do you want it to change? What are you going to do about this? What's your voice? What are you going to put out there? So this is a time, this is an energy that is inviting us to stop, take a moment of consideration, and bring something to a new level of energy. Can you reach across the aisle and speak to a neighbor, a person, a family member, a lover, a friend, a child, and first listen? Because Venus has to do with that energy of receiving love, being love. How are you receiving another's words, another's opinion, another's energy, another way of being in religious consideration? And Venus wants us to come into a sense of harmony and union, and Venus wants to have relationship. It doesn't want to separate out and say we're separate but equal. It wants to say we're united together and we find unity together. We're not free unless all of us are considered as part of the whole. Along with this, well, since we're talking about Venus, Venus is in the sign of Scorpio and has been for a couple weeks now. And as of today, which is October 5th that I'm filming, she has station and she is turning retrograde. We just went through a summer where upwards of 7 planets were retrograde by the end of the summer, and probably from our astrology reports, we were saying it has an intensity to it. Intensity doesn't have to be bad. There can be an intensity of passion, an intensity of inspiration, but the energy is just intense. It's coming to the surface, it's boiling things out, it's bringing things up, it's bringing things out. It's demanding that things be done differently, that the vibration can't stay the way it was. This can be expansion. You expand into new possibilities, new relationships come, a new intensity is found. It can also be, this is so intense, I need to change things and there's too much stagnation, or I need to go into my emotional body and see what's there. And as I mentioned, the emotional body, Venus, connects to our senses and our emotions, particularly when she's in the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is intimacy, transformation, the soul, the energies that are behind the physical seen world. And her retrograde happens about once every 1.4 years. As a counter to that, Mercury retrogrades once every 4 months. And it will be going retrograde again, the planet Mercury, in November, just after Venus finishes her retrograde trip. When Venus is going retrograde from now until November 15th, it'll be 40 days wandering through the wilderness, 40 days of the flood, 40 days of you name it. And it's going back over the tracks of where she has been since she's entered into this sign of Scorpio and a little bit into Libra. So she's going to be going inward and into the unseen emotional energies. The biggest thing for this spiritual evolutionary journey that we're on is, what is the feeling behind something? What's the energy behind it? What's the memory behind it? What's gone on in the past life? What is the unseen relationship going between us? What's the energy exchange? It goes back to that Libra thing. If something's out of balance and it's not seen to our physical eyes, that Pluto in Capricorn and Venus going retrograde through Scorpio is going to say, it's got to come to the light. What's been secret, what's been hidden, what's been unspeakable, what's been taboo, what's been forbidden, what's been depressed, repressed, or suppressed needs to come up out of the underworld and be seen and confronted, or transformed, or somehow it must come to a death cycle. Scorpio rules the cycle of death. And we can see that around us now. The sun isn't quite in the sign of Scorpio, but as of October 22nd or so, the sun enters the sign of Scorpio. And in the shamanic traditions and the yogic traditions and many other traditions, this is the time of the year they call the dark season, or we're heading towards where the veil thins between the worlds and the unseen world becomes much more felt. Messages from the ancestors are able to come through. Message from spirit is able to come through a little more. And the energies are mixing and blending more at this time of year. It's no accident that Halloween, Day of the Dead, Day of the Saints, and All Souls Day are all happening just about October 31st, November 1st, 2nd. That's the midpoint between fall and winter. And it's when the veil, at least in these traditions, is most open, when the things from the underworld, from Pluto, that energy is coming out of things that are unseen, and they're coming to the surface, at least to be seen in the emotional body, in the intuitive body, and maybe even in the physical world. So Venus going through Scorpio can be asking for more truths to come forward, maybe particularly around the government with Pluto and Capricorn, or around structure or your personal karma. And it's really asking us to check in around our relationships and how we're connecting to intimacy. Scorpio also rules the dynamics between power and energy. Like, the reverse sign to Scorpio is Taurus. Taurus wants to know what your personal power is. Scorpio says, what's everything else's power? The universe, the world, government, taxes, laws, regulations. Things that are outside of your control may come into your world by Venus's retrograde. People also outside of your normal world may come in. Somebody from the past that you haven't connected to for a while may return during a Venus retrograde to check in on that relationship, to see what the nature of it is, to see if there's something that needs to come to resolve, or a truth that needs to come out, or some new blossoming that may come forward. Venus, on a side note, when she has this retrograde time, she does 5 retrogrades over the course of 8 years. And after that cycle completes, she'll return to the same 5 points that she did over those course of 8 years, making a 5-pointed star, or a pentacle. Or you can think of it as a human being, 2 hands, 2 feet, and a head. If you've ever seen Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, standing in a circle, that's exactly what the Venus star points look like when she meets up with the sun 5 times over 8 years to start her retrograde cycle. A little technical, but go online on Google or on YouTube and look up what the Venus star cycle looks like. Incidentally, or not incidentally, 8 years and 5 retrogrades. 5 goes into 8 1.6 times. That's the golden mean, or pi, or the principle of beauty. And Venus, in the tradition of the Greeks, and Lakshmi in the tradition of the Vedic Hindu tradition, represents beauty. It's the shape that makes the nautilus. It's the shape that makes stars in the sky, or the fractal geometry, or things of beauty and architecture in our world are usually applied to the principle of pi, 1.61. And so she makes that same pattern around us in the sky above us to identify that principle of beauty. Just an interesting, not necessarily side note, but something that Venus connects to in the physical world, that she draws that shape. Venus is also making a square to Mars. Mars is in the sign of Aquarius. That same square energy that I talked about between the Sun, the Moon, and Pluto is happening between Venus and Mars, the masculine and feminine principle. Venus, which wants intimacy and love and connecting to the intuitive world, is squaring against Mars, which is the masculine, which wants to go forward, which wants to initiate things in the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius is society. It's higher principles when it's in balance of what we envision, what a new world could look like, things that we want to do to bring harmony and balance. A beautiful principle of Aquarius is unity in diversity. You can think of your hand for this principle. One hand, but a diversity of fingers. They come together in unity and they work, but they can all do individual tasks. That's one of the highest principles of Aquarius, is taking a whole society and valuing the individual as well. Not letting the individual become just a number or a particular gender type or somebody who's subject to a law. It's how much do we value all of our individuals? Or the shadow side of Aquarius is not valuing the individual at all and just going for the pure totalitarian or completely socialistic principle where the individual is not valued at all. So it's a tricky one. It's unity in diversity and diversity in unity. And when Venus and Mars are squaring around this, we can kind of have a little like, I'm coming up against the boundaries of society, or I feel like I'm being objectified, or I feel like I'm not valued, or I don't feel like I fit in, or this group of people is not working for me, or this set of values doesn't work for me. And again, that same square dynamic is we can come into a collision, or we can seek the principle of a triangle. Instead of having this dynamic be challenging, it could say, raise your vibration, come into greater love, find a way to come around this problem and create something new of beauty for our society, something new and beauty for our children, something new and beauty for our government, something new and beautiful for our systems of justice, and how we play that out. So those are the major aspects I wanted to cover in this report. As a review, we have our new moon in Libra with the Sun, seeking balance and harmony. That's squaring our planet Pluto and Capricorn. What's really of value to us, and how are we going to find that in our relationships? Venus is retrograde, so a lot of things may be coming up from the underworld, including sexuality and sexual issues, because Venus and Scorpio have to do with sexuality and the energy of transformation in creation and death. And also we have that square to Mars over there, the masculine principle. What are we going to do with this? What are we going to do in our societies, in our soul groups, in our groups of friends? We'll look forward to seeing you for the next full moon report. Namaste, yogis.